A legendary Iowa coach finally explained what the Caitlin Clark era truly felt like. And it was not the smooth highlight version fans remember. She compared it to steering a rocket ship while everyone argues about where it should land. Every game turned into a spectacle. Every road trip felt louder than the one before it. And the strangest thing was this. The biggest moments were not always the ones shown on TV. Lisa Blutter witnessed Clark's record-breaking journey up close. And when she finally spoke honestly about what it was really like, the answer surprised people. She did not describe coaching a star. She described guiding a person inside a storm, managing emotions, guarding confidence, holding the locker room steady, and still demanding excellence every night. Because this is what many missed. Iowa was not just playing basketball. They were moving through a media phenomenon in real time. And the emotional weight was not about winning or losing. It was about how fragile everything can feel when the world treats your season like a movement. If you believe the story behind the story matters, hit that like button. It shows we are on the right path. Because what Lisa Blutter revealed changes how we see those 4 years at Iowa. And honestly, it changes how we should view what Caitlin Clark is doing right now in the WNBA. Let's block out the noise and connect the dots. When Blutter was asked about keeping in touch with Clark, she shared something telling. She said she still talks to Caitlin, often follows her success, and always wants to support her. That sounds like typical coach talk. But then she went further. She said her respect is not only about what Clark achieved, it is about what she handled. In her young 24 years. That word matters. Handled. Not achieved. Not won. Handled. Because what Blutter saw was not just basketball greatness. It was a young athlete carrying a level of pressure and attention most players never experience in an entire career. It looks glamorous from the outside, but it comes with non-stop demands. To be perfect, to be available, and to be the story every time. Many of you have pointed this out for weeks now. You noticed how Clark plays differently than other stars. How she lifts teammates instead of isolating them. How she stays grounded despite the chaos. And you were right. That foundation was not built quickly. It was formed during those Iowa years, when the spotlight went nuclear, and Blutter had to develop a player, while the entire sports world turned her into a daily headline. When you read between the lines of what Blutter said, you understand what made this job different. On a normal team, a coach can experiment. You can let a player struggle. You can learn from a bad week and keep it inside the program. With Clark, nothing stayed private. Every possession had an audience. Every miss became a clip. Every adjustment became a verdict on the entire program. Think about that reality. Blutter had to respond instantly, not just with plays, but with counters. Not just with counters, but with emotional balance. Because when everything runs through one player, an off night is not small. It changes the feeling in the building. It affects the confidence of others. It shrinks the margin for error. Clark was not part of the offense. She was the engine. And when that engine stalled, even briefly, everything felt louder, tighter, and harder. That is what people miss when they talk about records and sellouts. Behind the show, there was a coach trying to keep balance while the world judged every result. Here is where it gets interesting. Blutter said the pressure Clark carried before tip-off was noticeable. The arena could feel tense. Even during warm-ups, one bad stretch turned into a week of noise. Not just from opponents, but from expectations, from constant attention, from people deciding what Iowa should be, what Clark should be, and how the story should look. You can see the pattern forming. This was not about strategy. This was about managing a cultural moment while still coaching basketball. Every opponent designed their night around making Clark uncomfortable. Different coverages, traps, face guarding, 2 defenders shading her before she crossed half court. Sometimes the goal was not to stop her, It was to exhaust her, to drain patience, to test how long she could carry the offense without forcing plays. And Blooder had to guide all of this, while keeping Clark teachable, while protecting her confidence, while keeping the team united, instead of letting attention divide them. That is the overlooked part. The tactical battle was only half the work. The other half was guarding Clark's mental space and making sure the program did not collapse under pressure. What is fascinating is how Blooder describes their relationship now. She spoke as if they survived something together. And they did. Those seasons were not normal. They were a national spectacle. Every media cycle tried to redefine what Clark represented. Every big game carried a storyline heavier than the score. To move through all of that without the relationship breaking shows the trust they built privately. Connecting the dots reveals something fans often miss. When you hear how Aaliyah Boston talks about Clark in Indiana, how she explains the way Caitlin keeps her involved, keeps her confident, keeps her empowered, that is not accidental. That leadership style was formed during years of being coached through the storm. Boston shared something powerful recently. She said when they meet before games, Clark tells her, "You are going to be amazing, because you're amazing." And Boston said it is that confidence Caitlin gives her. That is the through line. The records were loud. The spotlight was louder. But the strongest part of this story might be the bond built inside the noise, and how it still shows in the people around Clark today. So here is the real question. Who deserves more credit for those Iowa years? The coach who built the environment, made adjustments, and kept the team grounded through chaos? Or Caitlin Clark herself, who may have been inevitable, with or without the system? Because what Blooder is saying quietly is that it was both. Clark had the talent, no debate. But talent alone does not survive that level of pressure. Without breaking, someone had to build structure. Someone had to absorb the noise, so Clark could focus on basketball. Someone had to say, "I believe in you," while also saying, "Here is where you can grow," without turning growth into criticism. That requires honesty, not just winning. And the fact that their connection lasted beyond the 4-year pressure cooker says something meaningful. Let me know in the comments who you think deserves more credit for those Iowa years. Drop your opinion below. This discussion is catching fire across the WNBA space, and I want to know where you stand on it. Most college, coach, and player connections fade after the season ends. Not because they were fake, but because the system and schedules change, life moves on, and the bond turns into a memory. Here it clearly became something long-lasting that usually only happens when both sides feel like they made it through something heavy together. When you look at the timeline, you see how intense it really was. In just 4 seasons, Caitlin Clark went from an exciting freshman to a global headline. The stats rose into territory that once felt untouchable. Crowds grew bigger, cameras multiplied, and the center of the sports world leaned toward whatever arena Iowa entered that week. It looked like past eras when one program controlled the story, except this time it was driven by one player, and Blooder was steering all of it. Not just the basketball, but the mindset, the nonstop media judgment, the praise that could flip into backlash overnight. The odd pressure of being treated like a symbol instead of an athlete. What made Blooder's recent words hit so hard was their tone. No emotion-filled speeches, no dramatic flair, just a steady acknowledgement of what it actually took. And often, the strongest praise comes without decoration, because it sounds like someone explaining a reality they live, not a story they are selling. That restraint says a lot. It points to how complex that partnership really was. Coaching Clark was not only about unlocking talent. It was about carrying weight, external pressure, internal expectations, the constant demand to be brilliant, while staying steady, while staying coachable, while still growing up in front of everyone. Here is what critics always point to. No championship. Iowa reached the national title game twice with Clark and lost both times. That is the easy argument because it is simple. But the truth is bigger and Bloodor knows it. The program reached places it had never been. The sport shifted because that era existed. Clark left Iowa not just as a record breaker, but as a player shaped by the most intense spotlight the women's college game has ever seen. She learned how to lead through noise, how to respond to nights when the world decided she was either a hero or a problem, how to bring teammates with her instead of letting attention isolate her. That growth did not come from clips. It came from years of being coached inside a storm. You can see the results now in Indiana. Watch how Clark plays with the Fever. Watch how she keeps Boston involved. How she lifts Kelsey Mitchell. How she has helped turn a struggling franchise into a playoff threat. That base was built at Iowa. Many of you have noticed this. You have seen how different her leadership feels compared to other stars. She does not chase spotlight. She does not act above others. She elevates. And that is not random. That is what happens when a coach understands that talent without character creates chaos. Bloodor made sure Clark developed both. We are now stepping into areas the media avoids. People close to the Iowa program have quietly spoken about how intentional Bloodor was in protecting Clark's development. Not just skill, but emotional strength. There were moments during Clark's sophomore and junior seasons when the pressure nearly became too much. Expectations felt suffocating. Criticism never stopped. If these accounts are true, Bloodor acted as a shield. She took on some of that external weight so it would not crush Clark's confidence. She had hard conversations about failure, about unfair narratives, about staying grounded when people either want to worship you or tear you apart. That goes beyond coaching. That is mentorship at the highest level. And here is the part that ties it all together: music. When Bloodor said she has deep admiration for what Clark has handled, she was not talking about trophies or numbers. She was talking about moving through a cultural moment without losing yourself. That is what Clark did. She became the face of women's college basketball. She carried impossible expectations. She faced criticism that would break most people. And she still emerged able to lead, uplift, and connect. That is Bloodor's real legacy. Not a banner, but a blueprint. A coach who guided a phenomenon without letting it destroy the person. A player who changed the sport without losing her ability to bring others along. That kind of bond is rare. You do not fully understand it until you hear how quietly they speak about it now, like they are still processing how intense it truly was. So if you are still reducing this era to one missing championship, you are missing the point. The title would have been the bonus. The shift had already happened. The sport already moved. The standard already changed. And the relationship between coach and player survives something that breaks most people. What we are seeing now in the WNBA, the way Clark is reshaping Indiana, the way she is influencing the league, is not happening by chance. It is the result of being coached through the storm, not being thrown into it alone. If you want more breakdowns like this, the behind the scenes angles, the details highlight reels, ignore, you know what to do. Hit subscribe and turn on alerts, because we are going deeper into stories the mainstream avoids. Next video, we are unpacking what is really happening behind closed doors with the Fever playoff push, and why some veterans are quietly concerned about what comes next. This is where it all settles. Lisa Bloodor coached the defining women's college basketball figure of this era. She helped guide a career that shifted attention, changed arenas, changed television conversations, music, and changed what people believe is possible in the women's game. That kind of impact stays with a coach forever, regardless of what one trophy case shows or does not show. And when she speaks about Clark with that quiet respect, it does not shrink the moment. It confirms it. It tells you she knows exactly what they endured, exactly what it cost, and exactly why it mattered. Stay locked in. We have every angle covered.